Welcome back to another episode of Cashing Out. I'm your host, Billy Alvaro, my co-host, partner, and godson, Wayne Hartzhart. We are Easy Sell Property Solutions. You can find us online at easysell411.com or by phone 631-400-EASY. Don't forget to find us on Facebook, Easy Sell 411. Like us there and also like us on Instagram. We have a special guest, second segment with him, David LaForte from Equity Settlements. You can reach David at equitysettlements.com. David is an expert in title. He works for one of New York's largest title companies. I've been working with him now for about 9-10 years. And David just brings a tremendous amount of expertise when it comes down to getting titles done. He's not an underwriter. He's not the person who reads it. He is the relationship person. But because of his wife on the back end, the relationship that they have and the force that they've put together working with Equity, they're just a wealth of information. Anytime I have a deal that we're looking to purchase that has some sort of a defect, I run it through David and his wife, and within minutes, hours sometimes, we get the answers and we get what we were looking for cleared up. In our first segment, which we recorded, we were speaking a lot about what title is and the title defects and liens and judgments. And so what I want to get into now is I want to speak about the issues when it comes down to surveys, right? Because we know we've had a lot of issues with surveys when we buy. We've also had the issues when we sell. So what is a survey? Does title cover the survey and insure it? And then I'll start getting into some more questions.
So a survey is going to determine boundary lines where a property begins, boundary lines where a property ends. It's going to determine what you're purchasing is on your property and in your boundary lines only. And same thing with the neighbors, that whatever the neighbors have is on their property and their property only. So going from minor to major, one of the most common things is fences.
Right.
Especially
on Long Island.
Yes, people on Long Island, kind of shortcut their ways, and they just, fence looks good here, let's put it here. So if the property next door is getting sold and the purchaser's attorney is educating their buyer to purchase a new survey, that survey comes back. It's called an out of possession. That fence is encroaching.
So that survey comes back and it goes to your company. Who then reads it.
Correct. Our company reads it into the title report, and they raise something called an out of possession. And
so what is that? What's an out of possession?
So an out of possession means that, keeping it simple, a fence is encroaching on the subject property, the property that's being sold. So a fence isn't that big of a deal. You get the neighbor to sign an out of possession agreement that they have not, will not, and do not intend to make claim to that property. It's only fair. You're spending how much ever, hundreds of thousands of dollars. You want to get every piece of that property that
rightfully yours.
Yeah, that's rightfully yours. So that neighbor will sign an out of possession agreement. It gets omitted from the title. It's an insurable piece. Sometimes they get recorded, sometimes they don't. But that out of possession will be released from the omitted rather from the title report, and it won't raise any exceptions going forward.
And that's only if the neighbor signs, correct?
That's only if the neighbor signs.
Now, what if the neighbor did not?
So if the neighbor doesn't sign, the buyer's attorney is going to go back to the buyer and say, we can't get the neighbor to sign. Sometimes they're going to ask for a price abatement, which is a decrease in the price. You got a fence encroaching on this property that we thought was a half acre. Fence is encroaching, 5 feet. Now it went from a half acre to 0.4.
Big difference. So now you're not, and you can't insure that property. Then,
well, we can insure it, but it's going to be.
You're only going to insure that 0.4. You're not going to insure where the fence is.
The difference, correct? So if you lose 0.1 or whatever it may be.
Yes.
So 10, 20, 30, 40 feet. Not going to be insured if that neighbor doesn't sign.
Correct.
And you can't rectify the issue.
Yep. And, as I go further in my career, more severe out of possessions are happening.
Give us some examples.
A detached garage. You can rip down the fence if it's that irritating. But, if the neighbor has a detached garage now that's 5 feet on your property.
On your property. How do you rip that down?
You can't rip the garage down.
So what does a seller do in those instances?
A seller's going to have to take a big price hit, if they're trying to sell to a conventional
generally,
buyer.
if they're selling to a buyer, right, that's getting a mortgage, Generally, that buyer's attorney is going to say, do not buy this house.
Not buy this house.
Do not buy it.
Correct.
So it's almost like that seller is going to have to sell it to a cash buyer.
Yes.
And then it's going to become the cash buyer's responsibility to figure it out and fix it.
Yep. I mean, going back to, our integrated real estate law firm, we always encourage a buyer to buy a new survey.
It's important.
To plan these issues, what's happening? What am I buying? Are the fences where they're supposed to be? Is there a shed, a dog kennel encroaching on my property? We don't require the buyer to get a new survey, but we really, kind of cringe when they decide to waive it.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of
very
issues
important.
that pop up that they'll be insured on, or at least brought to their attention of what the issue is.
Correct.
Because imagine if they didn't get a survey, and the guy's in the house for 2 years, and now he needs to sell because he's been transferred to another location, and he tries to sell his property, and that buyer comes in and gets a survey, and he realizes, I'm buying a house with a garage that's 5 foot on my property. What are you going to do?
Yep, that's always the example that I give when I sit down with purchasers to do contract signings. As I give the example and I say, well, if you don't do the new survey, what if you go to sell in 5 years and your new buyer, exactly like you said, gets a survey and they determine that there is a fence where it shouldn't be, or there is a garage encroaching on the property? That then becomes that person's problem.
Yeah.
So yes, it's a couple more bucks, but
What's the average survey? $650 to $950?
$650, $750.
But you know what? It's an insurance policy.
Oh, it's well worth it.
It's well worth it. We know from experience it's well worth
Yeah,
it.
It's the best investment you can make.
You're making one of the biggest purchases of your life. What's another $650 to add on to it? But again, going back to all cash buyers, that fence that's going 5 feet or that garage might not be that much of an issue.
Right, and that's a good point.
all-cash
So,
buyer.
when we buy, we do get surveys in 90% of the cases. If we're buying certain properties, we don't just because of the time of the essence. But we've purchased properties from sellers where there's been out of possessions. That one in Central Islip, how far was that fence on our property line? Like 30 feet?
Yeah, we were missing almost like a quarter of an acre.
I mean, it was tremendous the amount that we missed.
There was a yard that went back like 504, maybe 475, 500
But we
feet.
purchased
We were
the
missing
property.
literally, I think it was 60 by 100.
So the neighbor
Yeah,
just
it
came
was-
over and just made believe it was his land.
But now, let me bring this up to you. In New York State, there's some issues. What if somebody took that land 20, 30 years ago and nothing was ever done about that?
So it's called adverse possession.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
And there's a lot of cases out there about it that if the fence or the structure's been up there, I
think it's 10 years.
I think it's 10 years that
what
person can actually get claim to the property.
Yeah, they could lay claim to it.
Yes,
So they could fight it. So what does that mean? It means that if a seller is selling a property and the neighbor has their fence 10 or 15 or 20 foot on the seller's property line, and they can prove that it's been there for greater than 10 years, that neighbor could be a real ass and say, it's my property.
My property.
Yeah.
now.
And I could prove it's my property because here's pictures from 1975. Here's pictures from 1980. It's been there for the last 30 years. So I'm making claim that it's property, and guess what? It's no longer yours. It's mine.
Yep.
Which is a really crappy rule.
Yeah.
It's a horrible
Terrible rule.
But there's some neighbors out there. There's some
There's
people, if
people
they're
that would do
privy
it.
to it and they understand it. My neighbor almost did it, tried doing it to me, and I was a little bit too smart. And I said, no, it's adverse. It's not going to happen. I'm not signing anything. But yeah, it happens. It happens a lot.
That sliver of land actually can go to the adjoining neighbor. And meanwhile, you have this house, you're paying, Long Island real estate taxes, and you lost that 5 foot section.
Man, that would piss me off.
It's almost like squatting and taking a piece of land.
Which we've had that happen to us in Brooklyn. So if you're listening out there, we are Easy Sell Property Solutions. We have a company called Easy Sell Property Solutions. We buy properties all day, every day for cash. We have a very unique selling process or buying process called the Easy Way Out. And when I tell you it really is the easy way out, it's the fastest, easiest, most hassle-free way for you to sell your property. We're speaking today with David from Equity Settlements on title defects, and a lot of the properties we buy have survey issues. They have out-of-boundary issues. They have fence issues. They have judgments and liens and open C of Os and permits and violations, and all of these issues, excuse me, that a seller is going to deal with when they're selling to somebody that's going to get a mortgage through Fannie or Freddie or FHA or even a regular conventional mortgage. With us, as long as we're aware of it and we do our research, we're able to buy those properties for cash and really eliminate the challenges and the hassles of having you go out there and get the C of O straightened out, get your permit straightened out, go down to the town and get that pool permit or get the extension. It's it's a hassle. And so our service comes in, and with Easy Sell Property Solutions, we can make you an all-cash fair, and that's the key word I want you to listen to, an all-cash fair offer based on the condition of the property, all the issues with the property. Listen, we're not looking to make a killing in every house. We make a small amount on a lot of properties, and we do this day in and day out. And David could attest because we've been working with you now for about 10 years.
Correct.
So if you're a rehabber like us, or you're somebody looking to sell your property, I would highly recommend you guys get in touch with David LaForte over at Equity Settlements. You can reach him on his phone at 631-786-8391 or www.equitysettlements.com. I'm Billy Alvaro, Wayne Hartart. We are with David LaForte, Equity Settlements. We'll be right back right after these messages.